This is a Ramana Maharshi clip, a talk by Ramana Maharshi with comments by Richard Clarke. This is a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. I'm Richard. Welcome. I'm reviewing and commenting on the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. Today is talk number 92. A visitor said, "Some say that one should practice meditation on gross objects only. It may be disastrous if one constantly seeks to kill the mind." Maharshi, for whom is it disastrous? Can there be disaster apart from the self? Unbroken I is the ocean infinite. The ego, I thought, remains only a bubble on it and is called jiva, that is, individual soul. The bubble, too, is water. When it bursts, it only mixes in the ocean. When it remains a bubble, it's still part of the ocean. Ignorant of this simple truth, innumerable methods under different denominations such as yoga, bhakti, karma, each again with many modifications, are being taught with great skill and in intricate detail only to entice the seekers and confuse their minds. So also are the religions and sects and dogmas. What are they all for? Only knowing the self. They are aids and practices required for knowing the self. Objects perceived by the senses are spoken of as immediate knowledge, prakshaya. Can anything be as direct as the self, always experienced without the aid of the senses? Sense perceptions can only be indirect knowledge and not direct knowledge. Only one's own awareness is direct knowledge, as is the common experience of one and all. No aids are needed to know one's own self, that is, to be aware. The one infinite unbroken whole, plenum, becomes aware of itself as I. This is its original name. All other names, for example, Om, are later gross. Liberation is only to remain aware of the self. The mahavakya, I am Brahman, is its authority. Though the I is always experienced, yet one's attention has to be drawn to it. Only then does knowledge dawn. Thus the need for instructions of the Upanishads and of wise sages. The visitor expresses a common concern about the practice of meditation. He says that some people advocate meditating only on gross or external objects and caution against constantly trying to still the mind, that seeking to quiet the mind might have disastrous consequences. Maharshi responds to this concern with his profound insights. He asks a fundamental question: for whom is it disastrous? Can there be disaster apart from the self? This question is central to the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, which emphasizes the unity of all existence. Ramana says that any perceived disaster or negative consequence is ultimately a creation of the ego, not the true self, which is beyond suffering. He goes on to explain the concept of the I. The unbroken I represents the infinite ocean of consciousness, or the self. The ego, the I thought, which is called the jiva, or individual soul, is compared to a bubble on the surface of this ocean. The bubble is only water, signifying the essential unity of the individual and the infinite. When the bubble bursts, it merges back into the ocean, and even when it's a bubble, it's still part of the ocean. This analogy illustrates the unity and oneness of all existence. Ramana talks about the many methods, practices, and religious doctrines that have been devised to understand the self. He says that all these parts, including yoga, bhakti, and karma, ultimately aim at realizing the self. However, they often complicate matters, creating unnecessary divisions and confusion among seekers. He emphasizes that direct knowledge of the self needs no external aids or practices. The self is always present within you, and your own awareness is the most direct form of knowledge. We know it since we are it. Sense perceptions, on the other hand, are indirect knowledge mediated by the senses, the mind, and your tendencies. The simple act of being aware of yourself is the key to self-realization. The passage concludes saying the ultimate goal is liberation, the continuation of the self, yourself, the only self there is. Ramana Maharshi says that the great Vedic proclamation, I am Brahman, is the ultimate truth. While the I is always experienced, it often requires guidance and instruction, such as that found in the Upanishad from wise sages, to help seekers recognize their true nature as the self. This is the knowledge that leads to liberation and the realization of oneness with the infinite consciousness. This passage underscores the importance of understanding the self and the unity of all existence, while dismissing the complexity of various spiritual paths and practices. Ramana Maharshi's teachings highlight the direct and simple nature of self-realization, which is rooted in your own awareness. So inquire, know yourself, and be always free and at peace. These videos help bring Ramana Maharshi's teachings into your direct experience. Subscribe now